One of the most broken jutsus in Naruto is the 8 inner gates. This allows one to lift the limiters placed on their bodies, attaining power that allows them to bypass impenetrable defenses and even contend with the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. It is a jutsu accessible to everyone in the Naruto universe, not barred by bloodline limits, nor does one need to have an immense amount of chakra. Yet for some reason, there are only 4 characters in this universe that have the ability to use it. Why is that? Why aren't more characters trying to learn this overpowered technique, and what is the true barrier to entry? Well, that's what we're going to discuss in today's video. You see, most ninjas should be able to use this jutsu, something that could help them out in a bind or give them a slight edge over someone else in battle. They don't need the final gate of death. Even the first through third gate is shown to give a rather substantial amp to the user, as seen in Gaara's fight versus Lee. Kakashi himself has only ever shown the ability to use the very first gate, so seeing a kid half his age reach that level was certainly a shock to his system, but it doesn't answer the why. Yes, we can assume that while there isn't any genetic barrier to entry, there has to be some level of talent that is required. In fact, it's outright stated multiple times that Lee is a talented ninja, and also that he's a genius because apparently achieving the 5th gate is impossible through hard work alone. This is directly stated. Now, what exactly did Kakashi mean by this? As in, what type of genius is required to open the 8 gates? Does this person need to be a chakra specialist or have an adept understanding of the human anatomy? What type of genius does one need to be to attain this jutsu? Well, the funny thing is that this question was answered, but it's kinda convoluted. You see, during his initial training stages, Guy notes that Lee is no genius at ninjutsu or genjutsu, and he's not good at taijutsu either, though there's one area where he completely surpasses Neji. He's a genius of another kind, one with great potential. He's a genius of hard work. What this means is that the type of talent or genius that is required to learn the 8 gates is simply being adept at working hard. Yes, that is pretty much it, which by the way is contradicted by Kakashi himself, who says achieving this is impossible through hard work alone. So the boy must be a genius. So on one hand, being a genius of hard work is what one needs to attain this power, but it's also the case that hard work itself isn't enough. One must also be a genius. Now one could say that what Kakashi means by this is that one doesn't just need to work very hard. They also need to be a genius of hard work, so it can make sense if you wanted to. Now, as it pertains to how long it takes to master this jutsu, it somewhat varies. While it wasn't stated how long it took Guy to master the gates, it took his father over 20 years to do so, while Lee seemed to have done it much quicker, being able to open all of them early into adulthood. So there isn't any set parameters on how long one takes to master this technique. You simply have the talent or you don't. Now you might be saying, if it takes so long to master this jutsu, that explains why most characters avoid it entirely, which by the way, that is what most characters do. They avoid it. They don't even try to use the technique in an effort to see if they have the talent for it or not. It's as if there's a foregone conclusion that only Guy and Lee are allowed to use this overpowered technique, and we as the audience are supposed to believe that as well. The problem is that it doesn't work in universe. We can say from a storytelling perspective, it makes sense to not give every character 8 gates because it becomes less special if everyone can use it. And it would also make characters like Guy and Lee less unique to the story. You could also argue that the characters would be too overpowered, and that would make for a very boring power system. So there are many outer verse reasonings you could use to explain why Kishimoto didn't make it more accessible, but there are ways around this in universe. For example, one could actually argue that it wouldn't make the characters overpowered because there's a big difference between being able to master a technique and to simply use it. Take Rock Lee for example. He was able to use up to 5 gates within a year of training. Just imagine what a genius prodigy like Sasuke, Minato, or even Kakashi could have done if allowed to actually train to use this technique. Again, this isn't about mastering all 8 gates. Having 3 or even 1 would be very useful in a tough situation, such as when Kakashi activated the first gate to help him climb the mountain. It can be something as simple as that, or it could be to get that slight edge in battle. The user loses nothing by simply being able to use this ability in a great time of need, such as a life or death situation. Now, you might say, well, it isn't practical since the damage taken from this technique is way too great. And I understand why one would have this perspective, because that is what's implied in the actual manga. Kakashi made it seem as if Guy taught him how to summon Lucifer himself from the pits of hell, which kinda shows Kishimoto's mindset when it comes to this jutsu, at least initially. He wanted it to seem unattainable to most, and also very dangerous to the user. Kakashi was so concerned, he was like, no matter how much talent he has, you taught him something horribly dangerous. The reverse lotus tops the list of moves you shouldn't teach. And the way they go on to talk about how the form damages the user's body and how they're in constant pain, you'd think Lee's body would be ripped apart by this jutsu, but it wasn't. Even though he went up to the 5th gate, he was expected to make a full recovery. It's something even the lower level medical ninjutsu users could handle pretty easily. The only problem was the damages caused by Gaara, which almost retired him permanently. And this, by the way, is just Kid Lee, 1 year into being able to use it. And then you have Guy himself, who was able to spam the jutsu in the war. He fought Kisame in the 7th gate, fought the Tail Beast in the 6th gate, fought Obito, Madara, Obito again, and then Madara again, and then was able to literally contend with the 10 Tails Jinchuriki. He did all of that, by the way, in just a day. So, is this jutsu really that dangerous? It doesn't seem that way. I mean, you now have an entire squad in Naruto the Last who used it to destroy half a meteor, and even Lee's son who trained for a bit and was able to simply tap into it. At this point, even Naruto should have been able to use it. This dude had an entire Saitama workout routine every morning before school, which includes running 10 kilometers, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 pull-ups, 30 minutes ninjutsu training, and 100 heavy back punches. If this isn't hard work, I don't know what is. The funny thing about this is that Naruto has the best method to master this technique, using his shadow clones. The compounding experience would cut his learning curve in half, similar to his wind style training. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that there's a problem with Naruto not learning this technique. I mean, it would make sense if he did, since he's a brawler type, that's how he fights. But you could argue that his focus was elsewhere at that point in time. My main point is that one could say that if hard work is the main factor behind being able to open the gates, more people should be able to use it. In my opinion, this should be a base level jutsu taught to everyone at the academy. And that's because it's something so integral to what it means to be a shinobi, the control over one's chakra. These gates are limiters placed on one's mind and body, which means most of the characters in this universe have never used their true power, because these limiters feel as if their bodies won't be able to handle it. A person like Sakura is stated to have perfect chakra control, but she can't use chakra to open her gates. Why is that? I would argue that to have perfect control over one's chakra, you must be able to manipulate it to its fullest extent. That can't be accomplished if one isn't able to remove their limiters and gain access to their full chakra. They could in fact handle it similar to the Shadow Clone Jutsu. It's a dangerous technique to use since it divides your chakra equally with your Shadow Clone, which can kill you, yet they still allow ninjas to use it. In fact, it's one of the most commonly used jutsus across the ninja world by all ninjas. Even genin are allowed to use it. The only thing that's forbidden is the multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu, which, by the way, isn't a separate jutsu from the Shadow Clone Jutsu. They both use the same hand signs, just different amounts of chakra to create more clones. So it's more of a conscious choice not to create more clones than not knowing how to. The gates could work similar to this as well, where let's say gate 6 and above are forbidden, or just the last one which causes death. But at a base level, everyone should learn how to access the first or let's say the third. Number 1, of course, being the most important since that one removes one's mental barriers. With that limiter still active, you could argue that one could never tap into their full potential because it all starts in our mind. That is why I believe that 8 gates doesn't make sense not as a mechanic, but more so how it's applied in the universe. You'd think a power system based on chakra would require the characters to fully be able to wield it in order to master it, but that isn't the case. One can have perfect chakra control and one can be the most powerful character in the verse and not have mastery over the very fundamental basis of that power system, which is the flow of chakra. With that said, there's one option that might fix this problem. You see, this was never stated or explicitly implied in the manga, but one could argue that most characters in Naruto have used the first gate, at least subconsciously. This stems from a thing called mental amps, where characters seemingly on their last leg and they don't have any chakra left, but all of a sudden they somehow find the strength to do what needs to be done. Take Naruto's fight versus Gaara in part 1 for example. Naruto was seemingly low on chakra and on the verge of defeat, but was somehow able to find this hidden strength to spawn over 2,000 shadow clones. All because he remembered Haku's words about when people are protecting someone they truly care about or someone truly precious to them, they truly can become as strong as they must be. Now obviously the words themselves didn't give Naruto this power, but they made him believe that he had that power within him, which of course speaks to his mental limitations. That is what the first gate does. It's the gate of opening that's in your mind. It removes the mental limitations, which results in a boost in power. Similar to when Kakashi used it to give him a boost to climb the mountain. The visualization of this was actually his mind. It doesn't have any outwardly visual indicators like chakra flowing from the body or the skin turning red, so you'll never know when someone uses the first gate. All you know is that they've suddenly become stronger. So one can argue that every case of a ninja being mentally amped isn't some mystical power scalar logic. This is an actual established mechanic in the universe. Characters are able to access these gates without ever training to do so. The difference is that it's only done subconsciously. So if one wants to actively release those gates on command or even advance to more dangerous levels, they have to undergo the training needed to do so. This kind of merges two concepts together and makes certain events such as characters temporarily becoming stronger make more sense. It isn't some random thing where a character just becomes as strong as they need to be in that moment. This is their true power being released for the first time. Now of course that's just a theory and that might not be the case in universe, and these are two separate concepts. I just think it would make sense to merge them together and it wouldn't seem like, plot convenience, or it wouldn't seem contrived when a character just gets a power up from out of nowhere. It's also just a pity that in Boruto currently, we have no characters in the continuity of the manga being able to use this ability. Yes, there's Metal Lee, but he's barely canon to the manga. We only see him in the anime and he rarely uses this power. We don't see Rock Lee and we don't see Guy. We also don't see the entire security squad that was able to use the 8 gates in Naruto the Last. Like, these characters just don't exist at this point in time. So to really carry on these overpowered techniques, you need to have someone in the main cast be able to use it. And it's so tragic that Naruto, after losing Kurama, turns up to the code fight and we don't see him open the gates. That would have been so epic. Just imagine Naruto pulling up in Sage mode and also stacking 8 gates onto that to take on Code. That would have been amazing. But alas, we don't get everything we want in life. With that said, that is it for the video. If you guys liked it, drop a like and also remember to subscribe. And also, if you guys want to learn more about Naruto's chakra system, watch this video. And if you want to learn why Naruto's shadow clones made him weaker, watch this one instead. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.